Black bears are coming back to East Texas, and most of them are coming through Oklahoma. We're going to tell you a lot more about this, show you some cool clips. But first, make sure and subscribe to the channel, Chester Moore Wildlife Journalist and Investigator, to keep up with all the creepy, cool, and unusual wildlife stories and true crime in the outdoor stories that we have here on this channel. I love black bears. I think they're amazing. And black bear populations have certainly been increasing in eastern Texas. And a couple of years back, I had a discussion with people from Stephen F. Austin University, a couple of the research assistants and a couple of biologists. They told me that did a story of migration corridors of black bears into the eastern third of Texas, and there are three basic places the bears could come from. They could come from Louisiana, which is where I live right now, about 5 miles that way. They could come from Arkansas, and they could come from Oklahoma. They found that there were bears that came from all three states, but the state that had the most bears moving into Texas was definitely Oklahoma. And you'll see here a really cool video taken by my good friend Todd Jurassic of black bears just 20 or 30 miles across the border in Oklahoma. So we're seeing a lot more black bear activity in that northeast corridor of East Texas, but we're also seeing some down even in the Big Thicket National Preserve area and other parts of East Texas. And I've got numerous game camera photos over the years, and it's just a fascinating topic to see black bears return to the state. Something else that's very, very cool, the number of black bears that are showing up down in South Texas. A few years ago, we had one crossing Lake Falcon. We saw some bass fishermen get this cool video and still from that, as well as numerous hunters encountering them in places like Edwards County, Riall County, Kerr County, down the southwestern tier of the Edwards Plateau region, because you have a fairly decent bear population in that part of Mexico that lines up there. And once you get out to the Trans-Pecos, you get out in places like Brewster County, and you get out around Big Bend State Natural Area and Big Bend National Park, you have a good and growing population of black bears to the point there are actually bear crossing signs down in that area. And it's just a really cool conservation story, because in the eastern third of the state, at least in much of the state, black bears were extirpated. But now we're seeing, because of years of conservation, we're seeing black bears return, and I think it's really cool. But I want to shoot down a couple of rumors. The first one is that black bears are definitely not something Texas Parks and Wildlife is stocking. There are no black bear stocking programs in Texas. There have not been black bear stocking programs in Texas, according to certain people. That's why we're seeing the bears. That is just not true. But there definitely are black bears coming. And what happens is when a young male black bear starts sowing his oats, so to speak, he might move a long, long way. So that's why you'll see these sort of smaller black bears coming in, being seen in places like maybe southeast Texas. And that's usually a male bear. But there does seem to be some evidence as a bear starting to take up residence in parts of East Texas. And we certainly are seeing that down in southwest and west Texas. Now, of all the bear stories, and I've been covering bear stories in East Texas for 20 years. I have been part of a conservation program I did with Texas Fish and Game to put out bear posters to let people know shooting a bear in Texas is illegal and comes with a huge fine. We pass those out to hunting clubs all throughout East Texas and feed stores and places like that, gas stations, places that would have a high frequency of hunters. We put these signs out, and we also did numerous articles in Texas Fish and Game magazine and in the Fish and Game Report newsletter. And so I kept up a lot with the topic, and Al Weaver, whose son Ty is a taxidermist now, sent me a picture. It was, I can't pinpoint the exact date, but it was around 2010, 2011, somewhere in there. And they were hog hunting in Bay City. And Bay City is located basically, sort of southwest of Galveston. And they were hunting hogs, and the hog dogs bayed up a bear. And the picture you're going to see right here is that bear. And I've had this photo in publication for, 15 years. At first, I put it, I think, in the Port Arthur News, because it was a local man that got that picture. And so how did a bear get in Bay City? That's a very interesting question, because if the bear came from Louisiana, and it was definitely probably the size of what a subadult male will be coming through, that bear would have to go a long, long way out, go around the Houston metro area and make its way down. Now, maybe it came through South Texas, like Lake Falcon. It came all the way up the corridor. Maybe there are a few bears living around that Bay City, Victoria area. And interestingly, I had someone message me last year, and I lost the message, unfortunately. They sent me a message saying that they owned a black bear at the time, that it got out a few times in that general area, and they were claiming it might have possibly been their bear. They saw the photo. They didn't say it was their bear, but that was what they said. It possibly could have been their bear, but that bear was in Bay City, which is just a crazy, crazy story when it comes to, bears being present in the area. And, East Texas has a rich history of bears. And we have the Louisiana black bear, which is recently taken off the threatened list. But of course, that's a federal threatened list, and bears are still on the threatened list in the state of Texas. And a lot of people don't realize we actually had grizzlies back in the day. The Mexican grizzly was a resident of Pecos, Texas. So Texas actually has a more rich bear history than you might think. And it's something I have a real passion for. Something I love being able to see, writing about them and just seeing this rise of bears. But make sure, treat bears with respect. A lot of us that hunt, we have deer feeders out, and they're going to be right at your deer feeders and stuff like that. So be very careful. Although they are black bears, if you've seen recently in Arkansas and places, do attack people. So be very cautious. And you might have been to a place like Yellowstone or Grand Teton where there are a pretty good number of grizzlies, and hear about if you get attacked by a grizzly, you fall to the ground and play dead. You don't do that with a black bear. Most black bear attacks on people are a bear that wants to eat you. And that's a very rare attack, but the reason you fight back is a black bear may keep going, whereas a lot of times a grizzly just wants to eliminate a threat. So it's nothing we should be afraid of, but also if you know there are bear presence in the area, make sure and stow your food away from your tent and all those kind of things. And we're about to have to adopt that kind of ideology here in Texas and a lot of areas. They're already doing out in the Pecos, but I think East Texas is pretty soon to where we start thinking about being bear aware a lot more. But black bears are returning to Texas, and there are some living right here, right now, and I want to see one. I want one to walk out right in front of me when I have my camera. I've been blessed to photograph bears in Wyoming. I've been blessed to photograph bears in Tennessee, and it will be really cool to photograph one right here in the great state of Texas. So please, if you get a chance, subscribe here. Chester Moore, wildlife journalist and investigator. Keep up with all this cool wildlife stuff we're talking about here, ranging from black bears to great white sharks.